Okay, hello, everybody. Welcome to Melanin and Moonlight. I am one of your co-hosts, Tyrell Collins.
And I'm the other, Vernon Scott. And welcome, everybody. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the podcast. How are
We
you
are
doing?
here.
We're queer. Let me not. Um,
Look, we're here. We're queer. Like,
and we're cussing people out today. And before we even get into all that, how are you doing today, Tyrell?
I'm doing good. It's been a time, but I'm trying to see the positive.
Hey,
See, that's a message to everybody. Try to see the positive.
that's you know,
Even when you want to cuss people out, just try to see the positive. Like, do what your grandparents used to do. Just say, bless your heart.
it will take you some places. I know that.
Because you'll have people who take you there, and all you can do is like it's like, okay, if I go there with them, it's kind of like I'm proving a point. But then I don't want them to think that they can play with me at the same time. So I may try to find that middle ground where it's like I'm not going to engage with you, but I am going to say bless your heart and know that I don't mean
And sometimes, and I'm not telling anybody to do this, but I'm just talking about for myself individually. Sometimes it's like, you know what? I have the bail money, so what you want to do? Let's
it.
like, what do you want
Like,
to
no, this is why I be having a couple $100 saved.
do?
Like,
Like, we can go ahead and figure this out.
the
How do we need to figure this out? Because I love math. One and two can always equal three. What's up? One to three people?
yes,
No. Let me stop.
yes. No, we are not encouraging violence here, people, but
Not
we
at
are
all.
encouraging,
Not at
no,
all.
but we are encouraging to stand up for yourself and do not take crap from people.
Amen to that. And it's been a very good day for me. I actually had a nice
Yes,
little
how have
chat.
you been?
Yeah, I had a nice chat with my brother before we got on the call, and
Oh,
that was
wonderful.
good. So,
Yeah.
I'm in good spirits and whatnot. Clients, one canceled today, the other one, we made that appointment work. I'm still trying to figure out life after all these things, but that will come up more into the rent side of what we got going on tonight. But
Mhm.
making the best out of craziness is how we thrive and survive. So, here we are.
Exactly. Here we are. Here we are.
So to start things off, let's talk a little bit about, our medical system and all these other great things.
Mm,
Because personally, I've been, well, for those who don't know, I have a long history of hoeing, okay? Not necessarily saying that I'm over here selling the goods. We're not talking about that. But if I so choose, I do have clients that's willing to pay. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying anything more. Don't be looking for content that you find online because you won't find it.
mm.
Now,
No, we got rosters. We got
right.
rosters.
Now, with that, I'm a very stern advocate when it comes to my own personal sexual health as well as the sexual health of others. I like to give them the information that they need. But the thing that really frustrates me when it comes to our medical system is that we're at a place, and I don't want to put the blame on the orange orangutan that's in office because this is some stuff that's been going on for some time now. It's just our medical system in general. But I don't like having to go into an appointment and having to lie to a medical professional in order for me to get the care that I want or need for
Mhm.
myself. And that's essentially what I had to do within this past week. And also,
Mhm.
on my little discharge paperwork notice that they only indicated, sexual interactions with females, which is fine or whatever. But I know explicitly I mentioned that I do have interactions with male and females at times, right? So
Mhm.
how even that, and I get on the medical lens why they will put something like that because historically speaking, that can easily whatever's put there can have certain prescriptions denied to you.
Mhm.
But the thing that really frustrates me is that we don't get to be presented as full human as we talk about our sexual health or even the type of care that we want to provide for ourselves. Um, um, this past week, I chose. No, it was 2 weeks ago. Within the last couple of weeks, I did my routine follow up for my own sexual health, which is a full panel. I'm trying to get checked out for HIV. I'm trying to get checked out for all the other STIs, chlamydia, gonorrhea, trichomoniasis, all those things. And in order for me to do that, previously you can ask, hey, this is what I want. They'll ask, hey, have you had an exposure? You say yes, even if you may not have. They'll do the full panel, they'll do the screening, and you're good. Great, whatever. Now, if you're not showing any symptoms or there's no active symptoms, then they have the right to be like, oh, well, since there's no symptoms, we're not going to do the test. And it's up to the person who's they're providing the test of whether or not they're going to fudge the paperwork to allow you to do the test that you want to do. And I don't like that. I don't like
No.
that. I don't want to go into a medical provider's office, lie about symptoms that I'm not really experiencing, just so that I can have the capability of checking in on my own sexual health, especially since a lot of STIs can be asymptomatic, especially in men. And if
Mm.
I'm a person who's engaging with male, female, somebody who may be anywhere within the gender and sexual binaries and non-binariness of it all, I want to ensure that I'm communicating with my sexual partners in a very appropriate and
Yeah.
truthful way,
Transparent. Hmm.
and well-informed way. But it's hard for me to do that if I can't get the things that I need, and not to
Exactly.
mention HPV. HPV, something that is primarily carried by males and can be transferred over to female partners, and can cause cervical cancer in women and females, and can also cause, well, it has been linked to colon cancer in queer men. And it's like we don't test for that either. It's not something that is actively provided on um, the full panel that you request from your doctor. I've been trying to get an HPV test for like the past year, and it still hasn't happened. And I
Mm.
explicitly will mention, hey, this is what I want. This I would like to have this test attached to other things so we can keep things moving. So yeah, that is
Right.
the thing that I wanted to bring up for today's discussion, and I just
Yeah.
wanted to get your feedback on either some of your experiences or your thoughts on at least my current circumstances and essentially the circumstances of others.
No, absolutely. I mean, everything that's happening is kind of reminding you of the historical aspect of where we come from when it comes to, I think, homophobia in just medical practices. Like it boggles my mind that LGBTQ identities were, listed still in the DSM, in the psychology DSM until 1973.
Mm-hmm.
That is like what 52 what 50 52 years.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about the fact of how in some ways far we've come with medical practices and how we are, reverting back to certain things, it just continues to boggle my mind. And so, like, thank you so much for bringing up, like, your experience. I think to speak to myself, I haven't had the nature of an experience. Yes, of course I do get tested and things like that, but I just even think how it's outstanding that unless you are having certain symptoms, of something that you may have been exposed to, that sometimes you're not even told, just
Mm-hmm.
even in your blood work or blood test, that you have. I'm not going to disclose my necessarily medical information here, but I went through that last year with something that I found out that I have. And it is something that no, I don't have any, shame for. There's no shame about it or anything like that. But it's like I had to wrap my mind around the fact that, oh, this is something that I've had or that I could have had for like quite some time. And yet all the times that I've been tested, through different kinds of blood work, this has never this has never come up. So if that was happening like while we were in a relatively good place
Mm-hmm.
of very adequate medical practices, now like you brought up the fact that like clinics are now like you say, restricting asymptomatic testing, obviously due to policy changes, funding cuts, insurance carriers are denying coverage for routine testing unless there's, like you say, a kind of medical necessity.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just forcing, you know, um, queer folks and in queer communities, especially those who are Black and brown, trans people, non-binary folks, to navigate, this very ugly system that is not only now gate kept, but now it's become very hostile.
Mm-hmm.
So and again, it's like the like just the nature of like what you were having to describe, like it's almost like a violation of like public health ethics. Like, like lying to get tested, it undermines the literal patient provider, like relationship. And the fact that, we're having to get into the nature to do this. So I mean, just yeah, under this, occupant of the White House, this administration, these rules being changed to roll back protections. I mean, what is it? What is it? Can you say?
Yeah, and even with some of the protections they're rolling back, it that even includes HIV testing, how
Yeah.
you could have received a lot more free services because of some of the funding that was being
Mm-hmm.
provided there, and now that funding is being stripped away, and it's it's the one of the main reasons why I'm purposely framing this as a homosexual thing, or not homosexual, but just a queer thing in general, is because when it comes to sexual health, queer folk are usually the people who are at the forefront of ensuring that their sexual health is pristine, making sure that they're going to get tested on a regular basis, be it if they're living a promiscuous life or not. And it's not to say there's not heterosexual people that's engaging in safe sexual practices in terms of testing, because there are those out there. But the primary communities that are out there doing the thing happen to be queer. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I truly wish there were a lot more heterosexual people or straight people that were getting tested so that this kind of conversation would not just be relegated to the LGBTQ plus community or queer folks who are impacted, because straight people are impacted by this too. Like
Oh yeah.
the concerns about the STI rates as they go up and go down, a lot of that can be mitigated if more people were educated about their sexual health, if people had more options for testing, and there was a lot less barriers for testing, and it's advertised as a community problem, meaning broader community problem rather than a minority subset of the community problem. Which
Right.
another thing that fully annoys me is that it's only marketed to queer people to be on PrEP, to be on Doxy, or to again get tested, and that's not up to us. Now, I'm a firm believer that we're responsible of our own sexual health, meaning that whenever we're engaging with other people, that we have these conversations about sexual histories, or have they been tested and things of that nature. And quite frankly, if you're not asking those questions, you just don't care. And now, if something comes out that this person may have something, then there's a responsibility on both parts of were you testing yourself or not, right? And
Mm.
this is why it's good for us to have these conversations, and
Yeah.
be it in the public ethos as well as in our private lives, about who we choose to become intimate
Yeah.
with. And
Yeah.
also knowing that, oh, if I'm not going to have a conversation with people, what protections do I have for myself, which can be that prep it, which can be that doxy, which can be those condoms, right?
Exactly. And that's the thing, like, because of what's happening with the administration, it's like when you even think about the education that people were getting that is now going to be, either cut or reduced, like the whole nature of like Planned Parenthood,
Hmm.
and the abstinence only education, having to be reemphasized, even the nature of the reinstatement and expansion of like that, the what is it called, the global gag rule, which barred foreign organizations receiving U.S. funding from discussing the nature of things like abortion. So when we're thinking about how this disproportionately impacts, queer-led and inclusive sexual
Hmm.
health organizations even abroad. And it's not even something that not necessarily is not being taken in account for, but it's having this very ripple effect. Like when you create a hostile, kind of when you create hostile policies, no policies are ever perfect or
Hmm.
ever, can't be looked at again, can't be changed, amended, things like that. But we have certain protections that are put in place for reasons. Do they always work? No, absolutely not. There's always flaws in all types of systems. But to have a outwardly cut and outwardly attack on something is like, just so wrong. And so the administration supporting, these policies, I will say that for people in administration that do push back, it is kind of to say, yeah, their policies, like they sometimes they are blocked by courts, but it's about the nature of what they signify, though,
Hmm.
or what they signal. They say, even though like we can have like, oh, the administration wants to cut this or they want to, defund this or whatever. Yeah, even if it can be blocked by a court, the simple fact is that it opens up this hostility
Hmm.
towards patient rights and care, so just such a shock.
I don't want to be all like Martin and be like I have a dream, but I do hope that people will at least wake up a little bit more or become it's still the same phrasing. They're a lot more cognizant of how they may be impacted by the just the minute ways that the discrimination or the barriers that are placed around us, how they may be impacted in this. Like I
Mm,
mentioned earlier, many STIs are asymptomatic. Um, like for an example, even the HSV1 and HSV2, which I don't know why they still classify them as STIs because they don't test for either one of those in a general
mhm.
panel. And you can get the general genital version of HSV through oral contact, meaning the same way that you can get HSV1, you can get HSV2. And
Right.
they both can be transferred on genital or oral, whatever. It's just different strands that operate roughly the same, essentially. However, people will classify HSV2 as the STI versus HSV1, and they will identify that one as being genital, but it can be oral as well. But, anyways, the those are what some of the most popular versions of diseases that people may have. If you've had a cold sore before, you have HSV1 or you
Hmm.
have HSV2. But oftentimes they are very asymptomatic. And because of that, they don't test for it. And it's not saying that it's a bad thing that they don't, but it's one of those things that is so common, they don't bother to do it. The same thing
Right.
with HPV. HPV is so very common
Mhm.
that they
Right.
don't test for it, but it's the
Right.
lack of testing that can also prevent people from having a full understanding of what their health is.
Yeah.
Meaning,
Yes.
am I a person who may have a higher chance of developing colon or even um, ovarian cancer or cervical cancer because I have HPV? I
Hmm.
need to know these things so that I can make sure that if I need to be on any kind of medical regimen, I get that option to do so. Because if these things are left untreated until symptoms start to pop up, now there's we're reaching territory where now we have to treat when we had the opportunity to prevent
Exactly.
or manage to a point that it doesn't cause worse medical issues. So it's like if we're going to call something or consider something a full panel, or if we're going to label things as STI, STD, whatever the case, give people the option of knowing how they're impacted or if they're being impacted. If I decide to go out there and be at an orgy and have a great time, I want to be able to go to a medical facility to be tested after the incubation window has passed. Even if there's no symptoms that appear, be tested, have that confirmation that there is a negative, and then continue on my day. Or I go to, do the same things. I'm
Yeah.
asymptomatic and I see there's a positive result. Well, let's go ahead and treat that thing so I can go ahead and continue to enjoy my orgy life. Or you know, I am symptomatic and now I could, get the proper
Yeah.
treatment I need. And then that
And
also allows me to talk to the people who were involved with me to let them know, like, hey,
exactly.
there was an exposure. I was asymptomatic. Of course, I tested prior to the event, be it I was negative or whatever, but like, can please make sure anybody that you were involved with that you let them know because I know interacted. I interacted with this person. I'm letting them know. That way, everybody can go off and do the things that they need to do for themselves to make sure that they're not spreading diseases that may be a harm to another person. Just, responsibility and ownership of
Yeah.
our actions.
Exactly. And like you say, taking that ownership, it's really important because what's happening now is that with these kind of with these kind of, newer policies that are trying to be put in place, it's creating just very false narratives and really just contradicting public health logic, right? The earlier
Mhm.
and more frequently people are tested, the better off we are as a society. So like denying people access until something is appearing or something is evident, it's punitive. It's not preventive. And that's what the
Mhm.
medical field is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about preventative measures, So again, just one big contradiction.
Exactly.
So I cannot.
Well, I think that's all I have for the topic.
Yeah.
Anything for you? Or are we switching over to what's on your radar?
No, we could go ahead and switch over. You know, speaking of accountability. We've been talking about accountability as far as current administration goes. But one of the things we also have to take accountability for is, we tend to have this sort of like level up, kind of mindset, as we go on our own, kind of emotional growth journeys, our, eat, pray, love tours, all the things we do. However, what happens when we we're trying to level up, but there is a certain amount of accountability that we also do not take.
Hmm.
So it's kind of we're gonna just having a discussion about like really what does a level up mindset kind of look like in 2025. So I want to preface this video, this by saying that watched a very interesting clip from a queer black man. His name is Quentin Latham, and he had some commentary with Revolt magazine. It was an Instagram clip, And so he was offering this very bold, very unapologetic mirror to Black masculinity in general. Um, and he had some hard words. Now, again, this is up to your interpretation, however you want to interpret it. But basically, in this clip, he was talking about that Black women and LGBTQ folks are more so in a level up mindset when it comes to economics, when it comes to profession, socially, while a significant portion of cisgendered straight Black men are lagging behind. They're clinging to outdated ideals of dominance, control, just in, as we tend to say, like this very toxic masculinity. Now, I do want to say that I have seen, not just through videos, but I have seen through like personal, just in-person conversations and things like that of um, cisgender straight Black men moving into a facet, or not, I wouldn't say facet, but moving into a space of recognizing of how they can do better. And of
Yeah.
course, that is not something that is happening overnight. But just to signal back to Quentin Latham's comments, as he was saying, it's kind of like look at numbers. Like we are not the like Black women, TQ folks, we're not the ones that have historically like been in gangs or abandoning families or like just all these things that get attached to the Black man. So it's kind of like if we're if cis Black men are in this space about like, oh, why does this Black woman have this, or why do these people have that, or what have you, it's kind of like, well, instead of paying attention to that, why not actually turn towards accountability so that way you can level up as well. So it's kind of to say yes. And again, I do like the fact that he did mention in his video, it is not to disregard the fact that, again, we, especially for Black men, having very systemic oppression, in all sorts of aspects. It's not to disregard that in any type of way. But I think his whole main thing is like, yes, systemic racism is a brutal ongoing truth, but it also sometimes has been used as a scapegoat
Yeah.
for personal dysfunction. So it's kind of like at some point you have to, yes, we can blame the system. We can always blame the system, but at some point you have to take some personal responsibility. If you are wanting to have a family, you are wanting to lead your household, but yet you are doing nothing that contributes to that vision. So as you say, sometimes sometimes they have to offer is their appendage and audacity. So, so I just wanted to, get your take on that. Is it so that when it comes to not necessarily just Black women or LGBT folks or Black men that, sometimes we have problems of like putting our money where our mouth is. It's like we want these things, in life. We want to have this kind of a life, or we want to be revered and respected, but we don't do things that create that
Mhm.
vision. So just what's your kind of like take on the nature of what does it really mean for you to have a level up mindset in 2025?
I feel like a lot of it is being willing to divorce yourself from the narrative that you've been given your entire
Mm,
life. Like,
mm,
I remember having a conversation with people. It was in a group chat through GroupMe or whatever.
mm,
And it was primarily led by Black women, and it was discussing the age, not the age gap,
mm.
the the gap in education between Black women and Black
Yeah.
men, like what you brought up
Mm,
earlier. And
mm,
the question that was posed to the Black men in the group was, hey, now, Oh, okay. Let me go with the question first. The question was, hey, does anybody have any context of that can, potentially explain this? Now, I
Mm,
participated in this conversation thinking that this was a conversation open, creating a space to learn and actually take in the perspective of Black men. But what it actually was a conversation that was brought up in order to demonize Black men for not pursuing higher education and everything. It wasn't a conversation for understanding, right? But what I ended up communicating is that overall, we have to think about what Black men are told in our lives that's different from what Black women are told. Black
mm,
girls are told, of course, that they need to be better than men, they need to be better than white people. They just have to be better. So they
better.
are encouraged to do 10 times as much, and even go further than just bachelor's level. Of course, to be a mom and all these other things is another thing that's attached to that too. But then when it came to Black men, our message, yes, we do have to work harder than our white counterparts, but our main goal is to secure the job so that we can have that for the family. And that
Mm,
secure the job does not mean that I have to go beyond the college level. Me, so if I can secure a job that pays a pretty good wage at a high school level, I just have to finish high school, and then that's all there is for me. And then on top of that, especially as I'm growing up, the message was you have to go to college so you can get a good job. So
mm,
for Black men of this age, it's let me get that college degree and then let me find that good job, and that's all I need to
mhm.
do to thrive. So and that was the context I was trying to, provide for them that wasn't being listened to. But that explains a lot of the gap in the education attainment. Now, the
Mm,
other part is queer people, queer Black men specifically, already have an understanding that, okay, we still have to do a little bit more because our queerness is seen as a negative in
mhm.
Black spaces, white spaces, regardless of where we are. So we may have to make ourselves more marketable. And that marketability may mean
Right.
getting an extra certification somewhere after a bachelor's degree, going off to get a master's, doing something that will help me stand a better chance so that my queer identity is not the thing that's blocking me. So
Mhm.
we pursue a little bit more than our, heterosexual counterparts. Um,
Yeah.
now, the reason why I started this conversation is that we need to start to divorce ourselves from that. Heterosexual Black men is because that narrative keeps them limited from all the other potentials that they're able to achieve, and by
Mm,
removing them removing themselves from that, they're no longer trapped there. They can
yeah.
hopefully see that there's other things, other avenues that's preventing me from having the life that I want. There's other avenues that can open up more financial security for me if I decide to go back to school and whatnot.
Mm,
It creates a different level of understanding that a lot of Black men are not willing to really understand. And of course, you have the macho culture that's there. That's another factor. The being imprisoned more for Black men, those systemic factors are
mm,
another thing, and just the automatic vilification of Black male identity compared to that of Black women. Black women,
mm,
even off rip, are more hireable than Black men because Black men are seen as being a lot more violent than Black women. So
mm,
because of that aspect, that does play a role in their capability of doing the job. For
mm.
example, there's still debates about whether or not a Black quarterback is is can do the job for the team, and
All
studies have
right.
shown multiple times that having a Black quarterback is more beneficial for the team and can lead towards more wins than not having one. Yet it's
Mm,
still something that's argued as though he won't be able to function as well. So a lot
Mm,
of these things um, is a part of what keeps black men back, but there's also the ideal of not being willing to shake off all of those narratives that we were taught, which queer people have to do just by being queer, and black
mm,
women have to do because they're um matriculating and growing in a society that's automatically built against them. So they have to
mm.
recognize, oh, this system's not going to work for me, so I have to work outside of it in order for me to thrive in it.
Right.
And for black men, cishet black men, there's just like a blockage that's just saying, yeah, I don't know about that shit.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I really feel like we're in this kind of transitory state of how we see the black man because it's kind of like, when we think about our parents and our grandparents' generation, it's kind of like black men, we've had this conversation before, black men being raised to be hollow, like you can't show
Hmm.
emotions, don't cry and things like that. But then now, as we're starting to get into the age of conversation, as to say like, hey, we have CDC reports about the fact that black men are the most involved in their children's lives than anything else. Now, that is not a mistake to say the fact that we're the ones that's most present in the household. That's a very different thing that people bring up in the comments, which is, of course, not true. But the fact that black men are the men that get highlighted as far as taking care of their children the most,
Hmm.
find that to be very interesting. Also, the fact that I recently watched an interview that was circulating on social media. Barack Obama was talking about how he actually learned a great deal about ways in which he views masculinity from a gay professor that he had, and he actually encourages most you know uh, straight men to get yourself a gay friend. you know, can teach you some things. But the
Right.
reason why I bring this up is to say, like, I think that we've never really had like a good like in between. It's kind of like we go from this time of like black men being shut down to all of this self-help and all the, like therapy is good for all, which is good. But it's kind of to say like this is the era where we're working through some of like, okay, let's bring some of these shields down. That's why I feel I've often always felt that young men growing up today, that's why they always grow with such conflicting ideals, because it's like, you're taught that, oh, this is what a gentleman does, for a young woman. But yet you may meet a young woman that is like, no, I don't want you opening my door. I don't want you pulling out
Hmm.
my seat, like things like that. So you're getting a lot of conflicting, ideals about what does the performance of masculinity look like.
Hmm.
And I think what we have to do is we have to get into a place of really amplifying the fact of your masculinity or your ideas about masculinity, they have to come from what's innately within you. And that's
Hmm.
something I like that was being called out with this video mentioned earlier, calling out this hollow bravado that I think within a lot of especially straight black men who demand respect but haven't done the self work to earn it.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, if you don't respect yourself, which we can clearly see from the distribution of certain behavior, if you don't respect yourself, and again, this doesn't necessarily have to just truly be a black men conversation. This goes for anybody. If you don't respect yourself, then how dare you demand things of others?
Hmm.
So like somebody once said, it's like wise people do not make demands of people who are not or don't have as much power. So because the minute you start making ultimatums and demands, it's like, what is that really saying about you? So this whole aspect of wanting, especially I think for black men, this entitlement without contribution, this desire for leadership when you don't have vision. All of these things again are existing in contradiction, of each other. And just to speak to the whole systemic aspect of it, it is to say, I think that if Black women and LGBT folks can rise while dealing with racism and sexism and homophobia, then it's
Hmm.
like straight black men, it's like, yeah, let's get into let's level up our mindset. So thinking about that aspect of mindset, like I love how you made mention of like divorcing, like ideas, right? And I think what it brought up for me when it comes to like individually is really learning emotional literacy
Mm-hmm.
or emotional vocabulary. For a lot of us, when we're angry, check in with ourselves. Are we actually angry, or do I just feel hurt by this? Because anger and hurt do not is not the same thing. And as men, sometimes it is hard for us to say that something hurt me or that really hurt my feelings, because growing up, we're not supposed to feel.
Mm-hmm.
We're just supposed to strap your boots up, keep it moving, and go about your life. But no, it's really trying to, I think, like teach us in this level up kind of mindset, developing language for your feelings and your ability to communicate them responsibly. And to black men's credit, you have a lot of people, black women included, love our black women, but sometimes, people come at you real left,
Mm-hmm.
or the thing or the venom that spills out of people's mouths, knowing the fact that, you got to keep it in check, but use your words. And then this whole aspect, I think we live in a time and a culture where everything, well, I'm going to say everything, but a lot of times we see, like these TikTok and Instagram videos and everything just about social media that is so much about chasing the bag these days. You got to chase money, you got to chase clout, but where are your values?
Mm-hmm.
Like what are your ethics? What is your integrity? Do you even know what that looks like as you are chasing the bag? Because I'm not here to discriminate. Chase the bag. That's the reason why we got to say it. Chase the bag. I want everybody to get their coin. But you got to have some values that go along with it. Don't wait until you're actually in a potentially hostile or you're in a potentially dangerous situation for you to think about, oh, like, what should I do? Because
Yeah.
if you actually had boundaries for yourself, if you actually had a, if you actually thought about what your values were, then it's like you wouldn't have put yourself into certain positions in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So especially as black men, we got to learn, to continue to think ahead. We
Yeah.
always got to be thinking ahead.
And this is why I enjoy specializing in terms of therapy work with Black men, because
Mm,
it's a beautiful thing to see another Black man come to a level understanding his sense of security, his own understanding of masculinity, and his own comfort in how he chooses to move through the world. And yeah, emotional intelligence and having that emotional vocabulary is one of the main things that I try to well, it's needed with men in general, but that one of the things in session that I really try to hone in on, because it really does help with bridging that gap of understanding that a lot of Black men have when it comes to them understanding their partners, understanding other people's reactions to anything that they say and everything like that. It's what really brings in that empathy side of things. And even with the young men out here, like one of the things I will always advocate for is, if you are dating and she tells you that your type of kindness is not what she's looking for, that is not the girl for you. Do not change yourself.
exactly.
Um,
No, exactly. Yes, I cannot with this narrative about you. Again, this is one of those things where black men, you can stand up and let your voice be heard. If
mhm.
you are in nature trying to be a gentleman and you are opening doors, you're pulling out chairs, you're standing when a woman, comes. Obviously, if she has a problem with that, again,
Not yours.
That's her prerogative, but that's her problem. It's not yours. Do not change the nature of how you present and you show up. That is not, to me, I'm sorry, that's not living in masculine energy.
exactly. And I've mentioned
and
this
not
on
living in masculine energy.
I mentioned this on here before, but I've had clients who would have the conversation about, well, why not just purchase a sex worker in order to get the things that they
Mm,
are wanting? And I was like, or why not just be upfront and honest? Like, you don't have to operate
mm,
as a person, you don't have to operate or move through life performing a certain role of meeting the characteristics that these women or this particular woman wants you to behave in if it doesn't align with what you're looking for or what you see for yourself.
exactly.
If you just want a casual relationship with somebody and you just go up to the a chick and just be like, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Is this something that you are cool with? And the answer is no. Keep it moving because that no is an opportunity for the a new person to potentially say yes because you
Mm,
understand that this dynamic is not going to work for you and you're not looking for that dynamic. Now find a dynamic that does. You don't have
mm-hmm.
to wine and dine somebody just to have sex with them, people. You really don't. You really
No.
don't. Now, if you are meeting up with somebody with the full intentions of there being that is going somewhere, then yeah, potentially you'll have to wine and dine them because who doesn't like a good date? If you don't
Mm,
like a good date, that means you're not dating yourself well enough. What are you doing? Like,
yeah.
how do you want to be in a romantic relationship? Like, do
Yeah.
you like to go out and golf and all these other things? Like,
Yeah. And at some point, I think, especially for if we're talking in the vein of straight black men, it's kind of like, listen, if you are coming from a minority group in any type of sense, black, queer, whatever it is, we have to level up because we have never had the luxury to be subpar. you
mhm,
know so what that means is that, just like kind of like Barack said in his video, it's kind of like, listen, you need to diversify, the kind of people you hang, the people you hang around. It's not to say that, no, you just need to get yourself one gay friend or whatever, but it is to say that putting yourself in different spaces and getting to know different kinds of people allows you to learn more about the world and learn how to um understand people's perspective. I think the reason why Barack brought that up in that interview was because he, like he said, I mean, obviously he's a human being like anybody else. So of course, probably being younger, he had certain ideas about what masculinity looked like, how certain
mhm,
topics were, to be discussed and things like that. But until he actually started having conversations and being in the perspective and learning from other different types of people, are you understanding a different mindset? And so the key is that you, in order to have a level up mindset, you have to choose growth over ego. Your ego cannot drive all of your behavior,
mhm,
you know. So and I'm sorry, the one thing that, gets us as men, as any type of man, is your pride. Being prideful, it's a seven deadly sin for a reason.
exactly.
Your pride can get you into so much trouble, can have you to lose all, anything you have in life, you know. But, just looking at a growth mindset, you have to think about what it means to be in community with other people. What does it mean to heal rather than to continuously wound? What does
Mhm,
it mean to say, like, okay, yeah, at this time my trust was broken, but how do I actually rebuild that trust? You
mhm,
know, what forms of protection do my black women need, or do my children need? What is it? Let me ask that question instead of just assuming that I know,
mhm.
so.
And one of the things I wanted to jump off on was when you mentioned, finding a gay friend, and that I definitely agree. Like, queer people are fun, just in general. But like in finding if you're comfortable with it, of course, and you do make a friend with somebody who happens to be queer, especially a gay man, and in terms of heterosexual men finding gay men as friends. The importance of emotional intelligence um, is needed because in having deeper conversations with people, especially if you're not paying a therapist, it's one, get a therapist, honestly. But in forming deeper relationships with other individuals, and you don't have the capabilities of uh, regulating your emotions, identifying your emotions, and name your emotions, there's a possibility because this has happened where when you grow and have deeper connections with these other individuals that you may feel as though you have a sexual attraction to the person when it's just an emotional connection and it's very new to you and you don't know how to deal with it and you think that the best way to make this work is for you to have sex with that person.
Mm,
Do not be that person. Okay. Now,
yes,
not to
yes,
say that because sexuality is very fluid and there's a lot more black men willing to engage with other men on the low than most people is comfortable with recognizing. But I only mention that because not having the ability to manage your emotions can really ruin a very solid and great friendship because now when sex gets intertwined into that or sexuality gets intertwined in that you're confused, don't know how to process this, don't now you're having an identity crisis and am I gay, am I straight, what's going on, this happened. It helps to be able to manage and regulate those things so that we reduce emotional harm for all people that's involved.
exactly. And learning that, and also to just to close out on that, learning that not everything, again, checking, just checking yourself because it's kind of like for me, I've always believed with no matter what sexuality spectrum, you're on, when you are secure within yourself, there is
Mm-hmm.
nothing that people do that can challenge that. Like this, for
Facts.
instance, like this stereotype that like all men, whether straight, gay, whatever, all men enjoy strip clubs, like that is the kind of narrative that's out there. Like
Mm-hmm.
no, no, that's completely not true. Like so my thing is even for like this like funny challenge that was going around, I don't know if you saw this, but there was this challenge going around on like Instagram or something like that where these men were calling like their like best guy friends or like their brothers or whatever, and they were calling just to say goodnight.
Mm-hmm.
And like it became like these very like viral, like or I wouldn't say viral, but just very like popular thing, memes going around to show like the uncomfortability that men have with just showing affection. So it's like these guys are calling like their guy friends or whatever just to be like, yeah, I just wanted to, just, check in with you, say good night, things like that. Most of the men in those videos, like they were like, is something wrong? Like, like they like, wait a minute, what's going on? Like they find it to be weird
Mm-hmm.
that like your guy friend is calling you like at night because he wants to say goodnight. Like why? Like again, just checking in with that. Like why is that weird? Like why is that weird to you?
Yeah,
You know?
because for somebody to show you a genuine non-sexual interaction is confusing because for a lot of guys, emotions mean are the provision of emotions mean that this is a person I'm okay with having sexual encounters with because that's something that's reserved for sex and romantic relationships only. So if I'm existing in a emotional relationship with another guy or another person that is not with the sole purpose of having sex with, then I'm romantically involved. And it's
Yeah.
it's a very interesting
Yeah,
dynamic.
exactly. That's the thing. If because I would think about myself in that situation, regardless if it was meant to be like a viral like joke or not. My feeling is, regardless if it was man, woman, child, whatever. If somebody called me up just to say like, "Hey, I just wanted to say goodnight," I don't, even if it was somebody in my family, like okay, I only know they call when something is wrong. So like in that kind of circumstance, I could
Mhm.
see me playing it off as a joke, like, oh my God, what happened? What'd you do? Or like something like that. But like somebody genuinely calling me to like, like say goodnight, regardless if it was for a video or not, I would be like, oh well, thank you so much. Like good night to you too. Like hopefully, like we get some good rest. We go into the next day. Whatever it is that I would say. But just the level of care I would actually
Mhm.
feel. Not carrying on the whole conversation. I'd be like, well, hey, bro, definitely good night to you too. Hope you sleep well. Hope you get, whatever that is.
Mhm.
I wouldn't think immediately like, oh my God, that's cringe. Like that's cringy. Like what is that?
Well, Tyrell, you're also gay. You
uh,
are very comfortable with your emotions. So,
right. Well, there's also a caveat because you also have a lot of us as Shia men that are not comfortable with levels of
you're right.
affection,
You're
even
right.
from.
You're,
So yeah,
but
I
that
do, but
comes
I get what you're
from
saying. I
that
get what you're saying. I
heterosexual
get what you're
stuff.
saying. I get what you're saying. I do get what you're saying. But yeah, but I mean, just in general though, I think like in any given type of situation, checking in about like your leveling, like that whole, just this whole thing about leveling up is realizing that your power doesn't come from control. It doesn't come
Mhm.
from you trying to control an outcome, control a narrative or whatever. It's about the actual care that you're giving to other people, other communities, and things like that. That's the only way that you are ever going to level up your mindset. When you look at things with clarity, that's why they always tend to say you can do a whole lot more by listening than you can ever do by speaking. Because if you
I
listen
would
to the
agree.
things that comes out of people's mouth, you will be amazed.
Listen, just like, oh, I should not be around that person.
Yeah, no,
Absolutely not.
no, just no, just no.
Oh God. All right. I think
Oh,
that now that we got a nice little breath of fresh air and good energy
yes.
and laughter, because I still feel like I might end up cussing. So if y'all are uncomfortable with profanity, feel free to grow comfort into that. As
Yeah,
we go into this
just grow comfort.
next topic, which will be whatever the hell F is this administration that is in that damn White House over there. That
Mm-hmm.
so go ahead, Tyrell. Bring us into it.
Okay, so there's this I was looking at this article that was talking about how, and this was an important topic for Vernon and I both because we both are in education in some, type of fashion. And just the nature of how like the occupant of the White House in this administration is trying to defund the Department of Education, especially for special needs. I had to ask the question because I always try to put myself in the position of like, something that's in opposition to figure out where in line is this kind of coming from. So with the nature of what was happening, there was an article that was coming out specifically here in Georgia that Republicans, just going to throw it out there, they want to co-sign the fact that they believe that the state can provide better resources to special needs kids. And so I had to ask myself, okay, let me try to look at this from their vantage point of view and then see where I kind of land. So, first question that I asked was, okay, are they kind of on to something or is this kind of just like majorly like overstepping? Right. So, again, this is where you have to do your research. The administration want to obviously dismantle again the Department of Education, arguing that education is essential could essentially be controlled at a state level. So just to put this into context, they want to transfer federal functions, including special education oversight, civil rights enforcement, and student loan management to other agencies and directly to states. Okay. So if I'm looking at it from their point of view, I think that they really see this as okay, if we can get direct funding to states and local districts that fosters better like flexibility. right? It would better align with educational priorities that, tend to mix with community needs. However, I'm like, okay, what this truly does, though, is that it creates very major risk. So when
Mm-hmm.
we think about, if nobody is familiar with the acronym IDEA, it stands for the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Their purpose is to ensure free, appropriate public education. They work a lot with FAP, that's actually another acronym for students with disabilities. They rely heavily on federal oversight. So in this retrospect, shifting control dilutes the accountability, right? So it threatens the protections and potentially leaves special needs, students inadequately supported. If we think about the Office of Civil Rights, right? The Office of Civil Rights actively fights against non-discrimination in schools based on gender, race, disability, all those sorts of things. So again, not to say that any of these organizations and things like that are perfect. We know that they're not. However, if we are proposing dismantling, it erodes those protections for marginalized students. So my thing is this: I, on some level, I could even put myself into the mindset of trying to understand about why you would want the state to control things. However, just like occupant of the White House and his whole entire administration has always done, they never look to find a middle ground, because you could say that there is maybe some potential merit to say, like, okay, well, if on the federal level, these issues have been prevalent, they're costing these billions of dollars or things like that. Okay, why not have some in between where the state is trying to work more with the federal on a federal level? And I have some thoughts about that, but I just want to stop talking for me. I really want to get your thoughts about, of course, what is actually happening with the administration and the current
Mm-hmm.
position about dismantling, things like the Department of Education and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
So later in this conversation, we're going to go into the budget and funding and all this other stuff and whatnot. But when it comes to the protections of kids with disabilities and how they will be impacted, especially on a state level, the thing that people need to really take a moment to really think about is, who is my neighbor and how does my neighbor feel about people with disabilities? And does my neighbor have a child with a disability or anything of that nature? And how do I feel about that? And the reason why I want us to ask ourselves that question, because that gives you a general idea of the regular old person who may be working in these offices, because not everybody is working in a job where they are feeling as though that the people who are receiving these services really need them, right? You do
Mm,
have those people who may have gone through specialized trainings to make sure that they're doing the work that is needed. Like, if when it comes to IEP approval, you need to have somebody that's on staff that understands what actual IEP is for, what is needed, why it's needed, and how to really properly implement that. And once you pass that paperwork on to somebody that's in the state, if a person's not educated on why this thing is very needed and why it's functioning, they will deny that. Meaning the student who may have developmental needs that the IEP can only help with, they won't be able to receive those services because the person who denied them did not understand what they needed to do. Now, if you don't have that oversight to ensure that the people who are in these places, in these spaces for approval, are not approving them on a legitimate basis, now we have a lot more kids who really need specialized services not receiving them, going into a system that is going to just produce more academic harm onto them, where they're not getting the knowledge that they need, they're not getting the resources that they need, and they just fall further and further behind. And it's not their fault, it's because somebody who doesn't understand what they're doing has denied them the right of education that they truly deserve. So we need to ensure that we have the right people by ensuring that we have that oversight. You see how that works? Because the people
Yeah.
working on that federal level, they are specialized to ensure they are auditing these things. They are making sure
Mhm.
that these denials were denied properly. Because if they get something across their desk that says, hold up, this kid has ADHD, they're on medications to work on that. They have social anxiety where they may have panic attacks if they're around more than 5 students at one time. Therefore, they cannot be in a classroom, a general pop classroom where there's 30 plus students in there. So maybe I need to reach out to them to see what was the specifics behind them denying this. Is this a school that I'm unfamiliar with that has private sections and there are only 5 kids per classroom? Maybe that's the case. Maybe that's why they denied this kid the help that they need. So let me reach out to the state to see what's going on here. And once they do, and they find out that they just denied it because of whatever reason, and this kid actually deserves that, you want to know what the Department of Education is going to do? I need you to go ahead and take this back, approve that, so this child gets their resources, so that they can get the education that they deserve and need. Because you're playing with my dollar at this point. We have
Mhm.
funding, and we need to make sure this funding goes out there to make sure that these kids get what they need. So I want to increase my income next month whenever we have our reviews or whatever. And in order for us to have increased funding, we have to show a need that we're doing things for the students, and you're denying those needs. Get them approved today. So
Ex-
that's why I'm
Yep.
out there.
No, and I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because like when we have our federal funding, laws that are in place, they provide a baseline guarantee for services for
Mhm.
low income families, for students with disabilities, for multilingual people, minority students. And so without federal oversight, if states can cut whatever corners that they want to, resulting in these similar inequities. And so again, it is not to say that, oh my God, everything that just needs to rest on the federal, because again, acknowledging the fact that not everything that happens on the federal level is inequity. There are problems within every system, of course. But if we're trying to get rid of federal role, we fragment the standards that are already in place. And that's
Mhm.
my thing. So when I thought about, okay, like I say, I try to put myself into the position of the other. So if I'm in a space of thinking, okay, well, how can the state be maybe more involved? I was thinking, you see, this is one of the reasons why I never would have gone into politics, because I'm just like, I'm someone who always likes to find a middle ground. If there is something that I'm in opposition to, I'm like, okay, this may not work 100%, but this works for what it does. So let me see how I can add to this. So if I was coming at it from that perspective, in saying that the state needs to be more involved, I'm like, okay, well, how can I strengthen, the state federal partnership instead of gutting it, right?
Mhm.
That may mean expanding block grant programs that give states flexible spending, while maybe I'm requiring outcome based reporting, so outcome based reporting, meaning we're asking questions like, okay, how are special needs students faring? Maybe I want to incentivize, I don't know, innovation through competitive grants. I don't know. Like you had brought up the IEP. Maybe I want to push for a simplified tech enabled, IEP that saves time for educators and parents. Again, rather than eliminating oversight, promote that kind of transparency, dashboards to track students' outcome based on race, based on disability, income, all those sorts of things. So that way so the state can advocate more effectively. So my whole thing, the occupant of White House and this administration is the rhetoric that they often go with or put to the forefront is always about abolishing something.
Mm,
They're all, in this kind of case, they're trying to abolish federal influence, which alarms us as educators, disability advocates, civil rights groups. And when you're talking about dismantle, not reform or put in partnership or things like that, but when you're talking about abolishing, getting rid of, cutting, that language innately creates distrust.
mm,
You know, so we don't, so this education reform that he supposedly, has, if you want to call it that, you know, it needs, you would need really empirical backing. And you're not going to have that because there is lack of implementation, there's lack of data support, you know.
mm.
So it's like you can't just again, these things can't be eliminated without executive order. But doing so, again, it raises that thing about, even if it wasn't to pass, the fact that this was even brought to the table in the first place. Like, really?
And and I wish people would take a beat to really think about how does this really benefit me? How am I going to be benefited with the Department of Education being abolished? What does
Mm,
that mean for our youth? What does that mean for me directly? So if you get sick and you don't have a doctor who's your age or within the last 10 years graduated from medical school, and Department of Education has been abolished for about 10 years since the last time you went to the doctor. Do you truly trust the doctor who's going to be seeing you? Can you even afford the doctor who's going to be seeing you? Because when you get rid of the Department of Education, that means public school is completely gone. Public state colleges and anything that is paid through that receives federal funding is not taken care of, which means the only schools that anybody can really go to is a private school. And if you don't have the funds to pay for that private school out of pocket, then you're not going to be seeing a doctor who has your lived experiences, especially if you happen to be poor. And if you've been poor and you've had medical negligence because the person did not see the impact of your poverty towards your actual health outcomes, they're not going to treat you for those things. They're not going to have that in context of understanding your lived experiences. So what they're going to do is just be like, well, I don't know why you're here. Here's a pill and keep you moving, rather than recognizing that maybe you're having heart palpitations because you're working several jobs in order for you to provide for your family. And maybe that what you really need is to find a regimen that reduces your stress so that you have a lot less of that and you don't really need the medication. So maybe if we had an education system where people come from very diverse backgrounds, be it impoverished, black, white, whatever the fuck it may be, they have the opportunity to really understand your circumstances the way that you need those to be understood and provide you with the information to help you deal with the problem that you're going through in life. Maybe that would help. Maybe. But we want to go ahead and defund it. Oh.
exactly. And that's the thing. Again, I try to put myself into the position of like, okay,
Mhm.
like you say, what does this benefit me? If I was somebody who was, and I wouldn't even necessarily say rich, I would just go ahead and go to wealthy. If I was somebody that was, that was wealthy, I would be like, okay, do I really, benefit from this? Because yeah, I may be able to put my child in private school or, a charter school network or, whatever. But in the long run, again, we thrive in the nature of community. Like,
Mhm.
this may be a temporary solution to something, but in the long run, who's going to be and even at a more disadvantage? Yeah, of course, our kids
Mhm.
and everybody that suffers, but it's gonna be your dumb ass too.
Okay. And it's
Like,
the lack of
and
researching.
they just don't understand.
it- Like if you really wanted to see how your state individually is going to be impacted by all of these plans to reduce funding, search your state's GDP. That will give you a lot of insight. So see where the budget goes because that is available online. I've seen Georgia's budget, and I know that there's a good bit that does go over towards education, but not enough to keep us afloat. We need the federal funding to take care of some of those services that we need.
And like you just said, because what I think there's public schools serve 90% of U.S. children. So like if I'm a CEO, right, of this Fortune 500 company, I got 2,000 employees. Now I'm back in this fool because of privatization. But yet again, I'm a CEO of over 2,000 people. Where do you think, how am I going to manage having a staff of 2,000 people if they can't provide for their homes and their children? Like, again, so who in the long, just because I can privatize my kids,
Hmm.
that doesn't mean my it's staff of 2,000 people can. So it's like, again, that ends up hurting me in the long run. So again, I'm trying to think about if I was just purely a wealthy and selfish person. Like if it was just about me, it still don't benefit me. Like
Not at all.
it's still, so it's literally this idea of false freedom. You
Right.
know, choice without, obviously choice without equity is always privilege. Wealthy, if you're somebody that's wealthy, you're already going to have a choice. But it
Mm,
doesn't mean that obviously it creates meaningful access for all. And if you are somebody that's wealthy, you didn't get there, by yourself. Either you've had it through family inheritance, or if you are somebody who has worked to build your wealth and you are overseeing people, guess what? The majority of people that probably work for you
mhm.
fall into that 90% who need to feed their children.
Right.
So
And I don't think
work.
interesting thing that I learned within the past year is that California, as an entirety of a state, funds the vast majority of the United States, meaning
Mm-hmm.
the federal government is running off of California's budget for the most part because there's so many states in this country that don't meet their own GDP. They don't get their money back. They do not
Mm-hmm.
earn enough money throughout the state for whatever reason. I don't know what's going on. But they're not breaking even. They don't have a surplus from the taxes that they may charge throughout the state to the point they're not making funds. They're not making money. Yet, same individuals voting for the defunding of a lot of services as though their state can handle that if anything is shifted to states' rights for real. If the federal
Mm-hmm.
government took its hands off of assisting them, their states will crumble within 3 months. Yet, you have states that are making an abundance of those funds, and they can really just run the entire country themselves if they wanted to because they got the money. They are subsidizing the federal government at this point. So, like,
Yeah. And then, his plan, I think, well, it was back in 2017 or something like that when his plan was like, oh, he wanted to like create vouchers for like the private schools. It's like, dumbass. Private schools receiving voucher funds don't have to follow federal laws,
nope.
meaning they can deny services and accommodations, which again, that's probably something that he wants. But it's not serving the betterment of anybody. And
Mhm.
so again, that is why when we talk about the state of, the US right now, it's like with this last presidential election, we've talked about this before, but just to, make very brief mention again, it's not the fact whenever you are choosing a candidate, it is not the fact that you agree with all of their politics, you agree with the way that they go about things like that. But it should come down to, okay, I'm looking at these two candidates or what have you, and okay, I can, even though I don't agree with something, I can see the vision that they're having. With this didn't this last election did not even come down to politics. This really wasn't about politics. You can basically say this was just about good versus evil. Or you can say it's about being competent
Mhm.
enough to do a job. And I'm sorry, the ways in which occupant and this administration thinks, it's like you have literally a secretary of education who calls AI A1. That's a whole nother video.
That about her. Oh, oh God.
Y'all laugh, and y'all, we shaking our heads and we laughing not because it's really funny, but if we don't laugh, we would probably have strokes.
That part, that part. Uh,
Ugh.
well,
All we can do is hopefully, things
and
have some symbolism of hope, even though it doesn't look like it's in sight. But that's what faith is for. That's
yes,
what
right.
is faith is about.
And well, since we're on, we did bring up the budget. I really wanted to discuss like how I've been personally impacted by the ass hat in house, because we both educators, work for the state, and whatnot. And with the recent bill that, they love so much and everything, that being passed, as well as the prolonged funding for other programs attached to the different reconciliation bills that they're not voting on until like September and everything, a lot of the state is not receiving the funding that they really need in order to keep things running without any issues. And that just trickled on down to my job to the point where my weekly hours were cut by 12 hours per week.
Mm,
And at first, because it was around 6 hours per week, I was like, that's fine, that's cool, I can manage. I have my multiple jobs and all this other stuff. I can make it work. When there's a will, there's a way. Wasn't that huge of a chunk, and I'm going to put a dollar amount out there, so y'all don't be watching my pockets, but I'm not saying I'm comfortable, but I haven't had to like really struggle as much as I had in the past. But
mm,
that 12 hours per week came all the way up to around $1,300 out of my paycheck every month.
mm,
And I don't like that. I don't
yeah,
like that. And as a result of this foolishness going on, I had to get me another job. And I've
mm,
already was working three jobs. Now I'm at four. And because I love teaching and I love therapy work. And now I have to work 12-hour days, something that I didn't think I would have to do after my internship, in order for me to keep up with the comfortable life that I love for myself, in order to
mm,
thrive and survive
yeah,
this ass hat in this damn house, because y'all motherfuckers just could not vote for the black woman. For whatever
yeah,
reason, you could not put in the competent black woman who would have made sure that at least, like Joe fuck ass Biden said in 2020, not much will fundamentally change. Nothing is going to
mm,
fundamentally change with the United States. At least I knew with that black woman that nothing's going to fundamentally change. But here we are, and the fundamentals are funding like some other kind of mental, okay? I don't know where we are. I don't know what we are doing.
yeah,
Cannot afford their homes at all like they could before. Eggs are ridiculously priced. Gas keeps going up and down and then hike up like 30 cents.
mm,
Inflation is really hitting us like no other. It's hot as fuck outside. They're getting rid of weather watching. Y'all who voted for this man that brought this onto all of us, I want to see you outside individually, one at a time. I'm not
yeah,
saying that anything violent's going to happen, but I'm frying chicken and I'm giving out three pieces to everybody. I would
yeah.
love to see you outside.
We said at the beginning as our check-in, like we were saying, like when you gotta defend yourself. Well, you know what? I feel like I need to be in defense because of y'all stupid ass choices. So you know
Listen.
what? We can throw hands.
Meet me outside. The chicken is frying and it's hot and ready.
Yeah,
All day we serve it.
yeah. And look, as the young people say, period.
Like it's ridiculous that this is the place that we are as a country, and I hate it for all of us. On some level, I'm still trying to find a lack of empathy to love it for those who voted for this. But I
Wow.
recognize that many of them may lack the intelligence, just to use a kind of word, to really pinpoint how all of this would have negatively affected them. And some of them just willfully did it because of their own racism, and that's just a pathetic part for them. And I hope you suffer. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm tired. It's only July.
Yeah. No. And some tells me we gonna be in for more buffoonery and tired and just tiredness. So
Mm.
what can you do?
Let them come up outside. That's what I can do. That's what I am willing to do. Three pieces for everybody. I got wings, drumsticks, breasts if you need them. Oh God. All right. Anything else for you, Tyrell, before we close everything out?
Mm, no, I think that was it. I think we covered a good bit.
All right. All right, y'all. Thank y'all so much for tuning in to Melanin and Moonlight, your late night space for deep, thought provoking conversations about sex, culture, and the well being of the Black community. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the podcast to keep the conversation going. Until next time, keep the vibes flowing and your minds open. Bye.
Bye.